Today, I'd like to share some very exciting breaking news about 491 income thresholds and 485 visa criteria, and a bit about Canberra metrics. Firstly, I'd like to talk about 491 income requirements. We understand the requirements of the 491 income was 53,900 previously, and they were concerned about the increase the figure to $70,000 a year, and there's a big concern. There's a lot of concerns about the requirements and a lot of hesitations for people to choose 491 visa because they're afraid they could not reach the income level. But however, what a surprise! The department actually removed the specific income requirements for this visa. And this change will definitely increase the popularity of 491 visa dramatically. Now basically the requirement is you only need to stay in the regional area for 3 years to satisfy the 191 criteria. So you only need to satisfy the residency requirement, not the income requirement anymore. And that's the very exciting news for people to choose 491 visa. And there's definitely a few more detailed questions need to be answered, which I will go through them one by one. So firstly, what you should do is just go on the 191 website on the Department of Home Affairs. You will see there's a term saying there was no minimum income requirement for permanent residency subclass 191 visa, and there's no registration instrument in place specifying a minimum income threshold for this visa. So simply put, they want to introduce instruments for this visa. They actually introduced instrument for this visa before, but now they remove the instruments, make it not compulsory requirement to satisfy. Okay, so this is how the thing's in place now. There's a few questions. We got a lot of inquiries after the news regarding to the location and distance, employment, and which I will go through one by one. First questions. So if I only need to submit 3 notice of assessment, can I simply not work? So can I just stay in regional area and doing nothing, making no income at all for 3 years to satisfy the requirement? So to explain this question, first thing we need to understand is what is notice of assessment. Notice of assessment is something issued by the ATO, and that can be understood as a proof of any individuals of Australian taxpayer. You need to submit to ATO after each financial year. So you need to file your tax, even you're not making any income. Even your income is $1 every year, you need to submit, to file the notice assessment to ATO. So technically speaking, yes, you can make no income. You can still be able to launch the notice assessment, NOA. But then, if that's the case, what will be the requirement for the income? From 491 to 191, it does not require a work requirement anymore. And one additional information to these, when we talk about income, any income, anything you report to ATO in Australia can be considered as income, not necessarily the salaries or payments for your work. It can be even rental incomes or any source of income you make from your investment. So anything really. But then, yes, there was no specific requirement anymore. But then, in the meantime, please remember, if you have a bit of income on your notice assessment, saying even it's $1,000 or $2,000, you need to still provide the evidence for that notice assessment. So if you have $2,000, I believe when you apply for 191 visa, you need to provide the document to support that $2,000. And if you have stable income from a job, and then pay slips and reference letter will highly be, there's a high chance the officer will still require those documents to support the notice assessment. So yeah, you can make no income at all, but then if you have some income, please provide the supporting documents. And that's for the first question. Second question is about the locations, or actually the location of the employer. We understand there are better working opportunities and employment jobs and everything in non-regional area, which are Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. So that brings to questions: can I work remotely for an employer in the non-regional city while I'm holding a 491 visa? So some applicants, some 491 holders will stay in regional area, but then work for the employer in the non-regional area. So this question is currently still a point of debate. One of the requirements of transitioning to 491 is to comply with all those 491 visa conditions, and the clause the clause 8579 of the 491 visa states that you must live, study, and work in regional area. According to the policy advice, the requirement for non-regional employer is a visa physically. You have to stay physically in the regional area. So that's something out of debate. You have to stay in the regional area while you're holding 491 visa. You can't stay in Sydney or Melbourne. That's not the purpose of 491. While you're holding 491, you need to stay in regional area. That's not a problem. But then what about the employer? What about the employer? For example, what about the employer who are not located in the regional area? For example, employer from overseas or employers located in non-regional cities. In practice, we're suggesting if those employer which are not actually located in the regional area at least need to have a physical office in the regional area to satisfy the requirements. So that actually apply to a lot of IT professionals. They might working for a project based in Sydney, but then you'll be staying in regional area during the whole time. So, but then the employer is definitely from Sydney. I think this is something still not yet to be clear. To avoid any confusions, it is better you're looking for an employer who which have a physical office in regional area. That definitely applies to somebody staying in regional area, but then working for a company based in overseas. So you can't simply working for overseas. But that's definitely not the purpose of this legislation. So that's the advice will be very clear. Try to looking for employers have physical office or at least have a branch office in the regional area to make sure you satisfy the criteria. On top of that, it is very clear while you're holding 491 visa, you can take in a course at a university through the remote learning. That's not a problem. So staying in, say, in Perth, you can definitely take an online study from any universities, say from Sydney University. That is not a problem. Remote learning, that is not a problem. But then working for employers who is not actually located in the regional area may be doubtful. Okay, so that's the second question, which we've been asked quite a lot. And the third question is more interesting. Can I continue to stay overseas and just file yearly tax file for 3 fiscal year to satisfy the requirement? Because as we explained before, the terms of the visa condition for 491 stays while you're in Australia, you had to stay in regional area, but it does not clearly says you had to stay in Australia for the whole time. So some people try to go for the loophole of this legislation, saying I can simply stay overseas for 3 years, but then I will have 3 pieces of notice of assessment. Would that satisfy the requirements? Again, this is a highly debatable issue. For example, one of the matters is whether you report tax in Australia, and if you are not physically, in Australia. This is some question you better. I will suggest you consult, accountant for the specific requirements. So, namely, you are not physically in Australia for 3 years of time. Can you report tax, for the 3 years of time? That's the first question. It's actually a taxation, question rather than a migration question. But then, essentially, this is if you're doing this way, staying overseas the whole time. I think again, this is go against the intention of 491 visa. 491 visa was implemented for the purpose, to encourage people to stay in regional area for a certain period of time, to promote the population growth in the regional area, to promote the employment and in regional areas. But it is definitely against the intention if you are not in regional area, even not in Australia during the whole time. So that is something we will not recommend. you go for overseas, and then 3 years later, after providing 3 notices assessment, you can apply for 491. So that's also another question. Next question is, where can the 491 visa holder stay in regional area? Previously, we say with 491 visa, you can stay any other cities, any other places, any other areas in Australia, except 3 major cities, namely Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Or of course, Grey Sydney, Grey Melbourne, and Grey Brisbane, subject to the specific requirement about the postcode. Now we will express in this way to be more precise. You can stay in 2.5. You can stay in any other places other than the 2.5 major cities. The reason why is in early 2022, the outer area of Brisbane's were now included in the regional area, and some of the areas only take you 30 minutes drive to the downtown of Brisbane. So Sydney, Melbourne plus majority part of the Brisbane will be not defined as ACT, and it's not defined as the regional area. Except from that, any place in Australia regional area, and that including the city with 4th large population, Perth, and Gold Coast, and Newcastle, Canberra as well, Wollongong, they all consider as regional areas. So there are plenty of choices for you to settle down, find a job, and spend 3 good years in order to satisfy the requirements. And some people, I believe, once they settle down in the so-called regional area, they actually will stay there for a long time. So this is something you have to, if you want to check the specific location for the definition of a regional area, you can go on the Department of Home Affairs website for the specific postcode. Okay, so that's the 5th question. And next question is about, I'm not staying in Sydney or Melbourne. But I will visit them quite often. Would that be a problem? So, can I travel to, outside of Australia or the non-regional cities during the period when I'm holding 491? The answer simply is yes. You can travel back and forth to your home countries while holding 491, and there was no specific time restrictions for traveling abroad. While in Australia, you can travel, visit, conduct business and attending trainings, meetings in non-regional area. However, the case officer might be looking to your case more closely while you spend outside of regional area, 90 days in a year or 60 days, consecutively at the one time, because that does not seem like a short-term holiday. So one of the suggestions is try to control the time outside of Australia to be less than 3 months if there was no specific compelling reasons, in order to avoid the doubts. Okay, while you're holding the visa, try to stay in Australia at least 9 months or out of a year. That usually will be considered as a usual residence in Australia. Since you are usual residence in Australia, you should stay as a usual residence in regional area of Australia. So that's the 6th question. And the last questions, it's about, we know there are a bunch of people who are already submit the 191 application. They already satisfied the requirement to apply for 191 visa. They were asking if there are any approval cases yet. Because the 191 visa just opened to the application since last November. Currently, there were there are hundreds of applicants who are already being accumulated. However, we haven't seen any approval case yet, due to the processing time. And of course, I believe there are a lot of workload has been, located to other visa assessment this financial year. But we're hopefully to see some approval in the next financial year. So. And that definitely will create some case for us to refer to, and for the future applicants to refer to, in terms of the very detailed requirement, because we haven't seen any detailed case yet, only the legislations. So hopefully we're going to see some specific case. So that's all about the 491 income news. And I understand even in ACT, in WA as well, last financial year there are a lot of people not going for 491 options because they are afraid may not be able to achieve the income requirements during the 5-year time, so they actually were deterred from applying subclass 491. However, next financial year, without the specific requirement for the income requirements, we believe that 491 will become much more popular, and particularly for those potential applicants who does not have high EOI points. Okay, so yep, again, it's a great news for all those skilled migrants, and you now have two options: 190 and 491. And for 491, the only difference is 3 years of waiting time. Again, and one more thing: 491 visa holders will subject to Medicare, so you have Medicare, and your kids still can enjoy the free public education, which means primary school and high school. So yeah, education is free in general, and then you have Medicare, and the only difference is 3 years of waiting time. So if you don't have better option and you don't have enough points to earn the nomination from state government's 190 or the independent visa from the federal governments, and there was a chance for you to be nominated under subclass 491, and why not? This is definitely a very good visa to go, and just considering the 3-year time differences. Okay, so that's a run-up about the 491 visa.